Good afternoon and welcome to the Global Summit Rising. Stand up, speak out, be seen. I am Janine Savion, my co-host Heather Alistray, and with us today we have Senta Knapp. Welcome, Senta.
Thank you.
It's lovely to have you here.
Yeah.
So in Senta's own words, well, actually, no, from ourselves, we would say we'd like to introduce you to Senta. Senta is based in Howick in Auckland, and she works as a visionary artist, crisis mental health counsellor, healer, educator, and conflict resolution facilitator. She is also the author of a book called Inner Universe. This book features her visionary pictograms. To find out more about her book or to access the free educational YouTube videos, you can visit her website on www.visualtouch.co.nz. Although formally trained, her inner process is orientated towards the study of self with a capital S. She advocates that this pathway will eventually forge the connection with that which is greater than our personality, our soul, or our spirit. Her approach is in essence the inverse of conventional educational practices, where the focus is on deductive and linear reasoning capacities. Although such learning is necessary, it becomes limiting if not balanced with the faculties of the receptive right brain. With the use of pictograms, her educational materials show how the non-linear and multidimensional right brain is our connection to the greater universal whole. Her website, www.visualtouch.co.nz, is a kaleidoscope of colour and well worth a visit. Senta also has a channel where you can access free educational videos. If you subscribe to the video channel, you will receive updates when new material is uploaded. So welcome, Senta. Lovely to have you here today. So let us start with talking about your website and your healing clinic. This is called VisualTouch. That's a very unusual name, and I was wondering if you could share with us and the viewers a little more about how you got that name and what it means.
Yeah. I guess every journey is unique and everybody's awakening journey is unique. And in terms of my insight, I actually gain it through touch, but it seems to present itself kind of in visual images. When I was in my early 20s, I picked up a sacred book, and the first time I felt the book, I connected with the vibrations of its writing. And since then, I have developed a love for this type of work. At the same time, my own processes, my own journey of awakening was a slow one. And a very significant event was when one day I was sitting and I was drawing, and all of a sudden I looked down and I saw that I had drawn a perfectly proportioned picture of a mother and a child. And it was like as if I connected to something deeper within myself, and I just heard the words, "The universe is infinitely nurturing." Yeah. Now, this was not something that I believed. This is part of me didn't want to accept this. And I didn't know what to do with this information. I'd never been drawn to, any of the spiritual circles or spiritualism. It just was of no interest to me, and I never wanted to become a channel or anything. So I didn't really know what I was dealing with, and I didn't have kind of like helpful information, or I couldn't find people that would actually guide me with this experience. So I thought, well, everything in the world is appropriate, and really I couldn't rely on external guidance. So I decided that the pathway forward for me would be to deepen my connection with this information that I was receiving. And it was really, there was such love in the experience of of this whole process. So the words were very specific, but the universe is infinitely nurturing. It didn't say that life is infinitely nurturing. So I started becoming aware that there was a difference between the personal self and the universal self. And this is now kind of like the area that I specialize in. When I continued with the paintings, initially I used to blindfold myself and I used to ask a question. And I used to sit till I felt the question in my body. And this is where the connection between the word visual and the touch comes in. I used to put my hand on the paper and then I used to draw. And I didn't understand what I was drawing. And then I would study my pictograms and they would actually teach me. So in this way, it was nearly like I was finding a pathway out of the personal into the universal, but it was my own inner guidance which was facilitating the process of the teaching. So I was told basically, or it was suggested that I would record my journey, to record my journey as inspiration. And it's really, just a personal journey, and it will be different for everybody else. But because within, there are not many stories around what an awakening process looks like, and recording a story would be of value. Everybody's story will be different, but kind of looking at the stepping stone that one person has walked on can serve as inspiration for other people. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Excuse me. So let's move on to your book now, Senta. What is your book, The Inner Universe, about? I mean, I absolutely love that title, because my knowing myself is that the universe is within. So, I mean, so many look up to the heavens, but my knowing is that it is within. So to me, the title of your book actually says that, speaks that to me. So can you share a little bit about your book?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a copy of the book with me, and you can see the main cover at the back,
Yes.
behind my behind me. Now, the picture that I've chosen as being the front cover is basically a depiction of a Trinity vehicle of the Holy Mother. So we have the three mothers that were present at the cross of Transfiguration. And when I drew this picture, again, it was a very profound experience. And I remember I then wanted to start to color it in. And the process that I used, they are all painted as icons. So I use traditional processes like you find in the ancient iconic traditions, where the canvas is, it's a board. It's called icon writing. The board is prepared with blessings. The basic materials are layered and then always pulled back, layered and pulled back, and layered and pulled back. So the first thing that I drew was kind of like nearly like the geometry of the vibration. And it was only after that the form gets added. And it's the same in the painting process. The dark colors go first, the black color goes first, which is representative of a spirit. And it's only later that the form emerges out of that. That we add the color for the blood, and that we add the color for basically skin and life, so that we've got something personal to relate to. When I started coloring in this picture, I was in a little bit of a hurry, and I thought, I'll just start doing the background. And that night I woke up and I was completely startled, and I just got the message. It said, something as sacred as the Holy Mother needs to be treated and painted with the respect that she deserves. So I think in terms of my entire process and the way that I approach things is really that we have to, if we are dealing with holiness and holy issues, and we are all holy beings, that we need to take care. We need to take care of ourselves. We need to take care of our environment. We need to take care of our surroundings. This is the nature of what is a holistic and a enlivening process. Yeah. So in the book, of course, again, the word, the key issue that I talk about is universal nurturance, and what this actually means. So I talk about the universal mind. I talk about faculties that awaken, because as we progress, also different faculties awaken. Now, each one of these faculties will awaken with a shadow aspect. So one has to be aware that everything is always constantly evolving. I specifically talk around the difference between personality, soul, and spirit, and not of people know how to define the difference or work with the difference. And then also look at the problems of integration, because the personality has to be one functioning vehicle. We cannot anchor only with an aspect of a personality. The personality as itself has to become one. It has to be an integrated vehicle if it's going to properly become a vehicle for a useful vehicle for which the soul and spiritual essence to flow through. In the book, I also touch very briefly on spiritual issues. It was very much my background and my life experience, and like as anything in life, we seem to work in the area that we had to go through ourselves. And my journey has really been the battle of having to go and let go of all external parameters and developing an internal structure, but also being safe with that, because initially I was terrified, absolutely terrified. I didn't know whether I was actually dealing with pathology, because that's all I knew from my mental health work, working with really unwell people. So I didn't really know where else, I didn't know what was going to lie ahead, and if I was going to engage, where it was going to take me. So there was a lot of fear around that, which I needed to address. Yeah. In the book, I also talk about, like, very simply about the basically spiritual practice, the unity behind all spiritual traditions, and then most importantly, the return of a capstone knowledge. Now, the capstone is the apex of knowledge. It's got to do with spiritual knowledge. And what does this really mean for us personally, but also for humanity at this point? And our transition as a humanity that we are going through. So we're going to see a lot that the personal journeys that people are engaging with will become a reflection of what is happening at a global level. And that in itself is within a yet wider context, which is a universal transition.
Absolutely.
Cycles within cycles, and we have to hold both the whole as well as the specifics within that whole. We are personal, and yet the context we all have in common. So we will see threads, we will see common issues emerging in people's journey of evolution. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I so agree with you when you say that. Well, in my own words, what I picked up was that life reflects to us what we're carrying with inside us. So whatever is asking us to look at will be reflected in our world around us. And that's what I picked up from your words before, Senta. Would that be correct?
That is a very, very valuable observation to make. So sometimes, we've become used to a system where we're only looking at one variable, but that's no longer appropriate because everything is interrelated. So some people want to withdraw only to work within the inner world, and they sometimes believe that the outer world is not a reflection of the inner world, but it's a continuity of consciousness. The outer, you can study the outer world and you will know what the shadow processes are or what the learning edges are that we ourselves have to go through.
Yes.
Before we really step into our power. And at the end of the day, most of us work is centered in power, because there are many, many different types of powers. There's power over others, there's powers over ourselves, there are loving powers, there's identification with the personal self, which then yields to identification with the universal self, which is beyond all personal aspects. So how we relate that we do not give away of a sacredness of who we are, and that we learn not to align through our lower bodies, what is also called the lower chalice, but really kind of bring our alignment through the higher chakras. And this is a slow process that requires study, dedication, meditation, and it is not something that somebody else will be able to do for you. It is basically centered in a choice.
Absolutely, yes. So for the viewers and for us too, can you tell us what is the difference in your knowing from the personal self to the universal self?
Mm-hmm. You first have to know the personal self. If you don't know the personal self, you will not know the universal self. It's a continuum. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So in terms of what I would, in most of my work, I would say that I work across 3 levels. This work is deeply personal. And in so doing, transforming the personal, the universal emanates.
That's
Okay,
beautiful.
so what I'm saying is, if you transform yourself personally, the effect of that has a universal consequence, because the pathway that you have chosen to embody is unique to you. And when you engage with that pathway, rather than what other people suggest you should be doing, but become really true to who you are and how you function, and what you would like to contribute to the world rather than just receive from the world, because the two are interrelated, that then has a universal impact.
Yes, absolutely. So, standing in a person standing in their personal truth is a huge part of this personal power that you're talking about, of course, isn't it?
Yeah.
And one person's truth, of course, may not and will not be another person's truth.
Yeah. And you pick on a very beautiful word there, and the word is truth. So I think it's very important to understand that there is no absolute truth. Okay?
Yeah.
Truth is a process. Yeah? Your personal
Yes.
truth is a personal truth. When you take many personal truths and you put them together, you have a different type of truth that emerges. All right? Yeah. So when we it's an evolving, the way that we perceive ourselves and the way that we perceive the world, our ability to perceive and how we see is an evolving principle. There's nothing fixed within ourselves. Yeah. Our consciousness evolves the whole time, so our truth also evolves. And as a result of that, you will also see, as humanity evolves, at every transition you need support services. So all support services are appropriate. It is not that one is more important than another, but it's more becoming fine-tuning what transition you are actually supporting. And in so doing, we will also see within the future, we will see that there are going to be support services for awakening humanity that we can't even yet conceptualize. It is an open-ended universe, and we as individuals are evolving, but we as a humanity are evolving as well. So in terms of our purpose within this incarnation is really already, first of all, to engage with our journey, but then also as we engage, we hold out a hand to the others who are doing that transition that we have just mastered. And as we complete the next transition, we hold out a hand to the next transitions. So all interventions, all help, all support is helpful. Even if it's limited at one level or another, it doesn't matter. In the long term, it will form the basis of building capacity. And that is a very slow process.
Wow, yes, absolutely. In your work centre with people, you would work a lot, I would say, with the shadow side of their aspects. You mentioned before that when an aspect comes up, there is the shadow side of it. And I just wondered from your knowing and your work with people, do you find that a lot of your clients find it a struggle to go into the shadow parts of themselves and own those parts?
It's the most frightening journey that you can engage with ever. It's like open heart surgery, and you're watching the surgeon go in there in what is such pain. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in terms of the way that I work with my clients, first of all, I like to, in my first session, I will normally engage or normally look at the field as a whole first and see how the various bodies, what role the various bodies are taking within the field. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, I will address an issue that is a very important distinction. So we hear a lot about energy workers and the word consciousness, and not a lot of people know what the difference is between the two. Okay, so we have many energies within ourselves. Okay, we have physical energies, we have emotional energies, astral energies, many different types of mental energies. I mean, we have the abstract mind, we have many minds, the linear mind, where a lot of mental processes. We have mental processes. The soul is a mental body of intelligence, and the spiritual essence is a universal body of intelligence. Now, what is important is that each of these aspects of ourselves takes its rightful place within the psyche. So when all bodies take their rightful place, so within the limitation of the physical, the effect of that is consciousness, because you're going to be able to direct all aspects. You cannot divorce yourself from any single aspect, okay, of yourself. Some people divorce themselves from the emotional body because it is too painful. Some people divorce themselves from life and they make it to be wrong, that they have incarnated. This is foolishness, all right? Yeah. If you are incarnated, be humble. You are here because you have to learn. And if you believe that you have achieved enlightenment, be humble. You're still in a physical body. There are many teachers, and you will draw them along the path for the little bit of work that they can facilitate.
Yes.
Yeah, so the effect, it's an effect. Consciousness is an effect. And we have to start to understand the differences between physical life systems and non-physical life systems. Inner life systems influence us, and we have to understand the principles that govern them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And going back to that word teacher, I believe that we are all each other's teachers. Every single one of us is here, crosses another's path for a reason, whether it's for a second or whether it's for however long it's for. I believe there's always something in every interaction between two people.
Yeah. And this is a process that you name that also escalates over time. So it becomes more profound. You meet less people, but you just have to ask a question and it's exactly the right person that comes along.
Yes, absolutely.
It becomes magnetized. The more you engage, the more the soul engages with you. And this is where, in terms of my practice and my work, I like to first normally look at the bodies as a whole and what role or what function, how well they function within the continuum of bodies that we have, and we have to be present to all of them. Within this context, we can then normally fine-tune a strategy that says, perhaps these are the learning edges, this is where development will lie. Or these are the closed-ended circuits, or these are the circuits, these are the pathways that are not yet receptive within your being. Yeah?
Yes.
So if you understand that the universe is infinitely nurturing, every experience that we have is eventually there to force you to awaken, because the universe is calling you back home. It wants you to grow. So engage with life.
Absolutely.
Have fun if you need to.
and do it quickly.
Yes, and just take time out to really listen. No more outdoor teachers required. Life is your bigger teacher.
Yes, absolutely. And I believe, that we can have the most profound experiences during the moments of fun.
Yeah, Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So, Cinta, share with the viewers what the difference between spirit, soul, and self is in your knowing.
Mm-hmm. Spirit and soul and self. So I have produced a beautiful little video, as I said, as a visionary artist. One of the frustrations that I've always had with my art and trying to communicate what it actually shows is that it has no movement. So what I've started doing now is that I've started taking the artwork and the principles, and I've animated them, the artwork, to show the geometry behind the artwork and how different processes work. So the physical self, the personality, the soul, and the spirit are a continuum, and they eventually work as a whole. Okay. And this process is really, the personality is the vehicle that develops first, through which we need to interact with life. Now, when this becomes one functioning vehicle and you are able to meet your personal needs in constructive ways, there's a connection that happens with the soul, which actually you see a reversal in the energetic field. So everything that first builds to come into incarnation, now is the soul is the destroyer of all of that. It releases you from your personal self to basically become more inclusive, not only of yourself, but self and other. Okay, you become harmless, and it's also governed by the laws of compassion. Yeah. So in my video, Consciousness Evolving, I explain this very simply using pictures and using images, because if you understand the greater context, you are able to very easily start to really name which transition you are going through. Yeah.
Yes, yes, thank you. And I noticed in the bio that the inner process is orientated towards the study of self with a capital S. So
Yeah.
I wondered about the capital. Does that mean the importance of self? Is that why the capital S?
Yeah. The capital is the self. So you have self-actualization, but I would always ask, which self are you actualizing?
Ah, okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
So the capital is more than the personal self.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You
And there
can
is
feel.
the only pathway, and this is where with my work, the area that I'm very interested in being kind of with this visual focus is really the archetypal language of that personal self, because it is an archetypal language and the symbolism is archetypal. And the process of how it starts to engage with our psyche is very, very sensitive and very interesting. So sometimes people will start to have dreams, and so the work is really to be able to understand what we are showing ourselves. So a lot of my work is taking people back when they have visions to understand what the vision really means. Normally our initial interpretation of a vision can be very wrong.
Yes.
We think it predicts the future. A true vision knows that there are many futures. All right. Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. Yes.
So, taking people back when people have a vision, or when some of the other faculties are starting to awaken, because it is unique to everybody. The work is really to take people back into that space, and in a safe way, so that they can to make that connection with how this language, or how this communication will happen for them safe, first of all, but also bigger. Yeah, because all
Yes.
that information is there, they just can't remember it. You can't access it. So all of who we are is there. The problem is not that it's not there. The problem is that we can't yet access it, because we're not mature enough to know what it is and how to work with it.
Yes. And how do you take your clients back to that vision?
Yeah. It really depends on how I'm drawn to work at the time.
Yes.
Yeah. And also kind of what faculty the client leads through. So it depends. Some clients will lead through hearing. Some people are visionaries. Some are very tactile. They feel it in their bodies. Some people, it really, it's a sensitivity. Through heightened sensitivity comes great strength. It doesn't make you weak. Yeah. If you
Yes.
truly know who you are, that's all that's required to be safe within the world. So, a lot of possibly misinformation around the capacities, the higher capacities that we hold. I have been shown that basically that we are crucifying our higher capacities on the cross of space and time. And that is basically because existing models are pathologically driven, just like our models around health are pathologically driven. Also, our models around psychotherapeutic interventions and have a taint of pathology. And that doesn't mean that they're not helpful. Everything is helpful. Everything is needed depending on how a person is working, but yet the context needs to become inclusive, needs to be broadened beyond pathology, to really include what is the soul, which brings people back to life. So we can become smart by learning, and we can become effective. But if we're going to be transforming, if we're going to be transformational in our natures, we have to become transformative within ourselves so that these energies can flow through us.
Yes. I believe, well, my knowing is that as we evolve, of course, and society and life as we know it here in this reality evolves, that of course the financial system, the educational system, the health system, that it's all going to crash and or alter, change so that the new comes in. And so we'll be embraced in a lot more of the inclusive way of being from that point, won't we?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And these transitions will be gradual. People sometimes think that it's going to be radical. The transitions are already happening as we speak. The people are already in place. The intelligence of the systems is already within the ethos of this world. It is already in the consciousness, within the global consciousness. And it now, we will see many leaders stepping forward within educational context, because it is all interrelated. So, up to now, what we've seen is that church has been seen separate to health. Health is considered to be separate to psychology, and we have many experts who do a singular thing. Now, that is the nature of a personality. A personality is single-minded, okay? A soul is multidimensional, and it sees the effect of an interrelationship and the balance between all singular points. So it is a far greater intelligence, and it also exists within the person, but also exists on a global level and can be accessed on a global level. And
Yes.
put it into place in physical, and will come into physical form eventually. Yeah.
And part of this, of course, we're seeing now is that communities are starting to form and come together, and collaborations happening on so many levels within different projects. I'm seeing for myself this happening, so I understand what you're saying there, Centre, about the soul knowing. The knowing of the soul, of course, is that there is no separation in reality.
Yeah.
That separation's here in the mind of man or woman.
Yeah. So one of the very important principles that will need to be considered, or that people will need to become aware of, is basically there will be an alignment of intent, but this is constantly purifying itself. So groups can form on many different levels, but the group is not supposed to align on the physical. The alignment needs to be held within the vertical dimensions and then emanate out into the physical. So we will see many groups forming, and we will see many groups folding at the same time. And people become distressed about this, but it is the natural order of things. So even wanting to be of service, or saying, I want to engage, I want to help, I want to contribute in some way. What do I do? You know, firstly, our contributions are small, and over time they become purified, and we get it wrong and it doesn't work, and we battle. That is important. Battle. Keep fighting. It doesn't matter. Things fall away. Let them fall away. You know, the learning. Did you get some learning? Did you do something? Did you get something out of it? Can you name what you got out of it? You know, so which part of you is developing as a result of this? So we all should be at least know what transition we are engaging with. We should perhaps be aware, kind of realistically, what our capacities are, but also being very realistic about what our learning edges are. Because I surely can tell you mine, and that doesn't mean that I'm not helpful as a practitioner. It means that we're just being real. We're just people. But the
Yes.
effect, if the intention is right, when two people come together with the intention that healing should happen, in that interaction of two people in a therapy room, it's the space between the two people. It's the battle between the two people. Now they could turn on each other, or they could come together in a greater unity that is inclusive of each other. And that's progress.
Yes, yes, it is.
Yeah.
So tell us some more about your healing work centre, and how do you work?
Yeah. Oh, how do I work? A very, very simple process. I take people back into the experience, and I will normally make sure that I do that across 3 levels. Whatever, if I will work with people to be able to really, first of all, name what is going on and what they would like to change, and then take them really deeply within how they are experiencing that situation, or sometimes it is how they're experiencing life. And first of all, within the subjective level, which is a dual level, our inner self, our personal self, but then I will also sometimes take people beyond that to be able to connect with the very energy of their soul. And this is a slow process. So, you know, also in terms, I normally recommend that people consider at least 5 sessions, simply because it's the time between sessions that the true work starts to happen. Okay, yeah. And then the next step is normally to see how people make sense of that. All right, yeah. So how do they define? What context do they use? You know, what do they impose on this experience? Yeah. And then the third aspect is really the reconciliation between the experience, how they make sense of it, within the universal context of their own evolution. So which of these challenges are actually as a result of an evolutionary transition that you're going through, or is this a challenge because you are not managing yourself well, or you actually have a hidden agenda here, or there's an aspect of yourself that you are completely unaware of, you know? So yeah, it is subtle work, and I think you know, I have trained in many, many modalities, from counseling to mental health. I work in domestic violence. So really deep unconscious processes. I did work similar to the Barbara Brennan work in terms of reading the field, and basically now sitting more with the esoteric aspect of being able to read the vehicles and understanding. It's more that it's becoming more and more of a mental process, in the sense of being able to balance both the love aspect. So the container needs to be built to be solid first. If a container is porous, we keep on creating illusions, and illusion is the creating force that keeps on creating reality. So we have to very much understand what our container looks like and how we function and who we are. And in so doing, eventually there's a transition from that to actually working within the light itself. Becomes a point when people can really work by themselves, and then it becomes the issue then doesn't so much, it's more about activation. So for example, the purpose of reading sacred scriptures and those thought forms, they eventually unfold across 7 levels. And these thought forms are actually not to be interpreted with an earthly context, because there is no language to explain them. That doesn't mean that they cannot be experienced. So this teaching across 7 levels is really an activation work, and it is slow, and it is what one calls when our meridian lines connect with the external lines, which eventually open up to universal principles. And at each stage you will have to, there's different type of learnings to be engaged with.
And this journey takes only 5 times to see you. It feels like it could be quite a long journey. I guess it would be different for everybody, but
yeah,
could be a lifetime journey.
Yeah, yeah, and this is the reason I don't like to see people for too long. Simply, I kind of draw a limit around kind of 5, because otherwise people want to rely on somebody else to do it for them. So within that context, you normally people will have, I will have prepared a nice summary. You will be very strategically focused, and you will also be able to name what you want to do in your own development, which areas you want to do further work in, and I will direct you into those areas. So after this, it becomes more, once people can hold themselves, then it actually becomes more important. And for I'm hoping that very soon I will be able to start a group process, because when people are then strong enough to be able to be put into a group, it is actually a group process which will activate them to then continue the next stage.
Yes. And so do you do this online centre as well as face-to-face?
Yeah. Obviously, my preference is face-to-face, especially I like to do a face-to-face. I will normally not take clients if I haven't had at least my first session face-to-face. But we are here to serve, and we are here to serve depending on what the needs are. And there's also a question about resources, of course, and managing my own capacities. So but at least I really do like to see the first person, the first session to be an actual reading of a field, and the person actually present within my room for that. Yeah.
Yes, it's just that this interview will go out to many, many countries, and so there may be some viewers that contact you from overseas that may ask if they can see you over the internet. That's why I asked that question.
So to the viewers that want to contact me from overseas, I think the starting point is always if they could formulate a question. I want to know what question they are asking. Okay, I can guide them from there. And I can also guide them to HAPS. I work with, when I work especially with younger trauma victims and stuff like that, I do work multidisciplinary. So I can also guide them in terms of a question and the issues to develop a plan. And then also sometimes, I do work with body workers, with psychotherapists, with therapists across the entire range, depending on what the issues are.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there's often more kind of the focus would then really be, I do like people to become connected with somebody close to them that they can see, either a group or a meditation group or a mindfulness group. It doesn't, whatever, or it can be a religious organization, whatever the context is, it doesn't matter. But kind of becoming more conscious about what is my personal plan. And it's very fulfilling when we feel that we are able to effect change. And first we have to be able to say, okay, I'm mature enough to effect change within myself. So how do I manage this? And then also taking responsibility for actually selecting who I want to work with and who I not want to work with, because that's choice.
Yes.
At least choose. It's, if you choose it, then it's your journey. Don't have to work with everybody.
No, exactly.
It becomes counterproductive. It just becomes a surfing ride through, other people's journeys. And that's not what it's about. It's about simplifying things. You don't need a PhD in this. Study yourself. It doesn't cost anything.
Exactly.
Keep it simple.
On your website, you say that you specialize in integrating unfolding soul and spiritual consciousness. What type of issues do you work with?
Yeah. So in my private practice, and this is the reason why I ask, what question are you asking? Because your questions will tell me your level of development, okay? So normally I deal with people who have capacities to self-manage, and they're often already in service of sorts, be they yoga teachers, some are, businessmen, whatever they are drawn to engage with. But normally there is a strong sense of already owning their personal power and knowing how to manage their own personal power. So this is two people coming in alignment, being whole already and standing within their own power already. Now, the effect of that and the questions that we place within that space is the important thing.
Thank you. Wow. So, what do you think, Heather? Fabulous. You've been very quiet listening.
Memorized. Just absolutely speechless. A wealth of knowledge and just what we needed to hear. The viewers.
Absolutely. So Centre's website is www.visualtouch.co.nz, and Heather will of course have it underneath.
Yes, I'll have everything down there for you all to go and see her work.
And her sacred picograms present unique insights into the consciousness of our inner being. You can also subscribe to Centre's monthly newsletter and video channel to be notified of new educational material. Just to let the viewers know this.
Yeah.
Thank you, Centre. Thank you, Janine. And thank you, viewers.
Thank you, Centre.
Thank you for your journey as well.
Thank you.